The blood-spattered trail in the dust told a story no words could capture, as Zara Keller struggled to drag herself from beneath the wreckage of the overturned wagon, her siblings' frightened cries piercing the vast emptiness of the Nevada desert. The year was 1868, and what had begun as a journey of hope toward California had become a nightmare under the merciless western sun. "Emma." "William," Zara called out, her voice cracking as she crawled through the dirt. Her 23-year-old frame ached with each movement, but the thought of her younger siblings trapped somewhere in the debris pushed her forward. The wagon had overturned when their horses spooked at a rattlesnake, sending the vehicle careening off the rough trail and down a rocky slope. Their parents had been thrown from the wagon during the crash. Zara had watched in horror as her father's body tumbled down the ravine, while her mother landed with a sickening thud against a boulder. Neither had moved since. The bitter reality of their deaths would have to wait. Right now, her 10-year-old sister and 7-year-old brother needed her. "Zara," Emma's small voice called out from beneath a canvas tarp. "I can't move, William's hurt." With trembling hands, Zara pulled away the heavy fabric to find her sister clutching their brother. The boy's forehead was cut, blood streaming down his pale face. Emma's leg was pinned beneath a wooden crate filled with their mother's china, what was left of it. "Stay still, sweetheart," Zara soothed, fighting back tears as she lifted the crate enough for Emma to slide her leg free. It was swollen and bruised, but not broken a small mercy in this catastrophe. William moaned softly as Zara gathered him in her arms, his eyelids fluttering. "Mama, Papa." He whispered, "SHH." Zara hushed him, exchanging a knowing glance with Emma, whose eyes filled with tears. "We need to get you both somewhere safe." The sun beat down mercilessly as Zara assessed their situation. The wagon was destroyed, their parents gone, their supplies scattered across the rocky terrain. They were at least 2 days from the nearest town by her reckoning truckee. California had been their destination, where her father's brother supposedly lived. Zara had never met this uncle, knew him only from her father's sparse stories. Their water barrel had cracked, soaking into the thirsty earth. What little remained might last a day if they were careful. Zara's own injuries, a gash along her arm, bruises covering her body, and a painful ankle would have to be ignored for now. "Can you walk?" she asked Emma, who nodded bravely despite her swollen leg. "Good girl. Help me gather what supplies we can." They managed to salvage a blanket, their mother's sewing kit, a small sack of flour, some dried beef, and a pot. The water they collected in their father's canteen would barely last them through tomorrow. Zara's heart sank as she realized the insurmountable odds they faced. The trail they had been following continued west, but how far could they make it with a wounded boy, a limping girl, and her own injuries weakening her with every passing hour? William's condition worsened as the afternoon dragged on. His breathing grew shallow, his skin burning with fever. The cut on his head wasn't the worst of it. Something inside was damaged, something Zara couldn't see or fix. "We need to find help," Zara decided as the sun began to dip toward the horizon. "We can't stay here." Using a broken wagon slat as a walking stick, Zara carried William while Emma hobbled alongside, carrying their meager supplies. They followed the trail westward, each step in agony, each moment a prayer that someone might find them. Night fell, bringing with it the bone-chilling cold of the desert. They huddled together beneath the blanket, William shivering violently between them. Emma finally slept, exhaustion claiming her, but Zara remained awake, listening to the wild howls in the distance, watching the stars wheel overhead and wondering if they would still be alive to see the sunrise. Morning brought no relief. William wouldn't wake, his breathing ragged. Emma's leg had stiffened overnight, and Zara's own wounds had begun to fester. She tore strips from her petticoat to rebind their injuries, rationed a few precious drops of water for each of them, and then resumed their desperate march westward. By midday, Zara's vision swam with exhaustion. The weight of William in her arms felt impossible to bear, but she refused to stop. The trail blurred before her eyes, dust and tears clouding her sight. When she stumbled for the third time, she barely managed to twist her body to avoid crushing William beneath her. "Zara, I see something." Emma suddenly cried out, pointing ahead with trembling fingers. Squinting against the harsh sunlight, Zara made out a plume of dust on the horizon. Riders, perhaps, or a mirage born of desperation, but they had no choice but to hope. "Hello," she screamed, her voice hardly more than a rasp. "Help us, please." The dust cloud grew larger, solidifying into the shapes of horses and men. 3 riders approached, their features indistinct in the shimmering heat. Zara clutched William tighter, positioning herself slightly in front of Emma. Strangers in this wilderness could mean salvation or something far worse. As they drew closer, Zara could make out that the lead rider sat tall on a chestnut stallion, his broad-brimmed hat shading his face. The 2 men flanking him were older, weathered by sun and hard living. "Miss." The lead rider called out, his voice carrying across the distance. "Are you folks in trouble?" Relief and wariness warred within Zara as the men approached. "Our wagon crashed yesterday," she called back, her throat raw. "My brother needs help, he's injured badly." The riders drew up before them, and the lead man dismounted in a fluid motion. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of storm clouds beneath his hat brim. A dark beard covered his jaw, but it couldn't hide the concern etched in his features as he took in their battered state. "Isaac Maddox," he introduced himself, approaching slowly as if not to frighten them. "These are my ranch hands, Barney and Tom. We're headed back to my place near Truckee." "Truckee," Emma perked up. "That's where we were going." Isaac knelt before Zara, his gaze moving from William's unconscious form to her dirt-streaked, blood-crusted face. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to William. Reluctantly, Zara allowed him to take the boy from her arms. Isaac's gentle handling belied his rugged appearance as he examined William with careful movements. "He's got a bad concussion, maybe internal injuries," Isaac said grimly, "and you're not much better off, miss. Zara Keller, my sister Emma, and this is William." She swayed on her feet, exhaustion threatening to claim her now that someone else bore William's weight. "Our parents, they didn't survive the crash." Something flickered in Isaac's eyes, understanding, perhaps, or remembered pain. "I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Keller. But right now, we need to get all of you to my ranch. My housekeeper, Mrs. Winters, has more medical knowledge than most doctors I've met." Before Zara could respond, her knees buckled. Isaac lunged forward, managing to catch her with his free arm before she hit the ground. "Barney, take the boy," Isaac instructed, passing William to the older man before lifting Zara effortlessly. "Tom, help the little lady onto your horse." "I can walk," Zara protested weakly. Isaac's voice was firm but kind. "You've walked far enough, Miss Keller. Let us help you now." As he placed her atop his horse and mounted behind her, Zara felt herself leaning back against his solid chest, unable to fight the wave of relief washing over her. His arm curved around her waist, steady and secure. "Your siblings will be fine," he murmured close to her ear as they began to ride. "And so will you, I promise." The rhythm of the horse beneath them and the warmth of the man behind her lulled Zara toward unconsciousness. The last thing she remembered was Isaac's voice, steady and reassuring. "We'll be a family, the lot of you. You're safe now." When Zara next opened her eyes, she found herself in an unfamiliar bed, clean sheets soft against her skin. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, illuminating a simply furnished but comfortable room. Her body ached everywhere, but the sharp, desperate pain had subsided to a dull throb. "Well now, look who's decided to join us again." Zara turned her head to find an older woman with gray, streaked dark hair smiling at her from a rocking chair near the bed. She held knitting needles in her capable hands, a half-finished woolen sock dangling from them. "I'm Beatrice Winters, Mr. Maddox's housekeeper," she introduced herself. "You've been asleep for nearly 2 days, my dear." 2 days. Zara tried to sit up, panic seizing her. "My siblings are just fine, Mrs." Winters assured her, setting aside her knitting to help Zara into a sitting position. "Your sister Emma is downstairs helping me bake bread. That girl has a natural talent in the kitchen. And William is on the mend. That was a nasty knock to his head, but boys are resilient creatures." Relief washed over Zara, bringing unexpected tears. "Thank you for caring for them, and for me. Don't thank me, dear. Thank Mr. Maddox. He's the one who found you and brought you here." Mrs. Winters poured water from a pitcher into a cup and handed it to Zara. "He's been checking on all three of you several times a day, even with spring roundup keeping him busy from dawn till dusk." Zara sipped the cool water gratefully. "His ranch must be quite large. The Pine Valley Ranch is one of the biggest in these parts. Started with nothing 10 years ago and built it into something remarkable." Pride tinged Mrs. Winters' voice. "I've been with him since the beginning, when he was just a boy with dreams bigger than his pockets." "Where exactly are we?" Zara asked, trying to orient herself. "About 15 miles outside Truckee, California. Beautiful country, though it can be harsh for those unprepared." Mrs. Winters' expression softened. "Mr. Maddox told me about your parents. I'm truly sorry, my dear." The mention of her parents brought a fresh wave of grief. They had been traveling to Truckee to start anew after their small farm in Missouri failed during a 3-year drought. Father had spoken of his brother John, who had settled near Truckee years ago. "We were going to stay with my uncle," Zara explained. "John Keller, do you know of him?" A shadow crossed Mrs. Winters' face. "John Keller passed away last winter, I'm afraid. Pneumonia took him quickly." Another blow. Zara closed her eyes, trying to process this new loss, their one connection in this strange land gone before they even arrived. "What will we do now?" She whispered, more to herself than to Mrs. Winters. The door opened before Mrs. Winters could respond. Isaac Maddox stood in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space. Without his hat, Zara could see that his dark hair had a slight wave to it, brushing the collar of his blue cotton shirt. He looked younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30 or so, though the lines around his eyes spoke of someone accustomed to squinting against bright sun and hard decisions. "You're awake," he said, relief evident in his voice. "How are you feeling, Miss Keller?" "Better, thank you, Mr. Maddox." Zara was suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance and the thin nightgown that had replaced her torn, dirty traveling clothes. "I don't know how to thank you for saving us. No thanks necessary." He stepped into the room, his movements careful, as if afraid of startling her. "Your brother's fever broke this morning. The boy's got more grit than men twice his size." Mrs. Winters rose from her chair. "I'll go check on that bread Emma's watching. Don't tire our patient, Mr. Maddox." When the housekeeper had gone, Isaac took the vacated chair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Up close, Zara could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, the way his beard didn't quite hide a small scar at the corner of his jaw. "Mrs. Winters told me about my uncle," Zara said, filling the silence that had settled between them. Isaac nodded. "I knew John, good man. He spoke of his brother's family back east sometimes." "We have nowhere to go now," Zara admitted, voicing her greatest fear. "No money, no home, no family left except each other. You have a home right here, Miss Keller, for as long as you need it." His voice was firm, brooking no argument. "When I found you three on that trail, I meant what I said. You're safe here and you'll stay until you decide what comes next." Zara studied his face, searching for ulterior motives. Men didn't often offer charity without expecting something in return. Her father had warned her about the harsh realities of the world often enough. "Why would you do that for strangers?" she asked bluntly. A sad smile touched his lips. "Because 12 years ago, I was the one alone on a trail after my family's wagon was attacked by raiders. A rancher named Henry Blackwood found me half dead and took me in, gave me work, taught me everything I know." He glanced out the window at the sprawling ranch beyond. "When he died 5 years back, he left me this place because he had no children of his own." He returned his gaze to her, intensity in his eyes. "I'm just passing on the kindness that saved me, Miss Keller, nothing more." Something about his straightforward explanation rang true. Zara found herself nodding slowly. "Thank you, Mr. Maddox. We'll try not to be a burden for long." "You're no burden." He stood, smoothing his hands down his denims. "Once you're stronger, we can talk about what comes next. For now, rest. Let Mrs. Winters feed you up. Your brother and sister are thriving already." As if summoned by his words, the patter of small feet sounded in the hallway before Emma burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Zara, you're awake," She rushed to the bedside, flinging her arms around her sister. Over Emma's shoulder, Zara saw William enter more carefully, his head bandaged but his eyes clear and alert. "Mrs. Winters let me help make bread," Emma announced. "And William's been helping Mr. Tom with the horses, and we saw the biggest cow ever, and cattle, not cows," William corrected with the superiority only a 7-year-old boy could muster. "Mr. Isaac says they're Herefords, the best kind." Isaac chuckled, ruffling William's hair gently, mindful of his injuries. "That's right, partner, and you've got a good eye for quality stock already." The easy way Isaac interacted with her siblings, the natural warmth in his manner, eased something tight in Zara's chest. Perhaps they truly were safe here, at least for now. "I'll leave you to catch up," Isaac said, heading for the door. He paused, looking back at the 3 siblings reunited. Something flickered in his expression, longing, perhaps, or recognition of what family meant. "Dinner's at 6, Mrs. Winters insists you try to join us if you're feeling up to it, Miss Keller." After he left, Emma launched into a detailed account of everything that had happened while Zara slept, from the kittens in the barn to the pies cooling in the kitchen. William, though quieter, seemed equally enchanted with the ranch and especially with Isaac, whom he declared was the best horseman in all of California, probably. "And he showed me his books," William added. "He has so many, Zara, almost as many as the school back home." This surprised Zara. She hadn't expected a rancher to be well-read, though she immediately chastised herself for the prejudice. People out west weren't the uncultured barbarians some Easterners imagined. "He reads to us at night," Emma said, curling up beside Zara on the bed, "stories about knights and adventures. And he does all the voices. A man who took in orphan children and read them bedtime stories." Isaac Maddox was proving to be an enigma, one Zara found herself increasingly curious about. By evening, Zara felt strong enough to dress in a simple calico dress. "Mrs. Winters had provided just something I had tucked away, dear, and joined the household for dinner." William proudly escorted her downstairs, explaining important ranch facts along the way as if he'd lived there all his life instead of just a few days. The dining room was warmed by a crackling fire despite the mild spring evening. A long oak table dominated the space, set with simple but fine china. Isaac stood when she entered, pulling out a chair for her with old-fashioned courtesy. "Miss Keller, I'm glad you could join us." His genuine smile warmed his weather-lined face. "Mrs. Winters has prepared a feast in your honor." The housekeeper appeared from the kitchen, carrying a platter of roast beef. "Hardly a feast, Mr. Maddox, just a proper meal to put some color back in the poor girl's cheeks." Emma and William took their places at the table with the comfortable familiarity of children who'd already established a routine. Barney and Tom joined them as well, cleaned up from their day's work, but still bearing the permanent tan and creases of men who spent their lives outdoors. The meal was indeed wonderful: roast beef with potatoes and carrots, fresh baked bread still warm from the oven, and a rich gravy that made Zara realize just how hungry she truly was. The conversation flowed easily around her, the ranch hands discussing the day's work, Mrs. Winters commenting on local gossip, and the children interjecting with observations and questions. Isaac, Zara noticed, made sure to include everyone in the conversation, asking William about the horses he'd seen, complimenting Emma on the bread she'd helped bake, drawing the usually taciturn Barney into telling a story about a mountain lion they'd spotted last week. He acted less like an employer and more like the head of a family, a realization that made Zara study him with new interest. "Miss Keller," Isaac addressed her as the meal wound down, "I've been meaning to ask, what were your plans once you reached Truckee? Besides staying with your uncle, I mean." Zara set down her fork, considering the question. "My father was a farmer in Missouri. He hoped to start fresh here, perhaps find work in the lumber mills or try farming again if he could acquire land." She hesitated, then added, "I was a school teacher back home. I had hoped to find similar work here." "A teacher?" Isaac's interest visibly piqued. "We're sorely in need of educated people in these parts. Truckee's growing fast with the railroad coming through, but our schoolhouse has been without a proper teacher since Miss Henderson married and moved to Sacramento 3 months ago. Hope fluttered in Zara's chest. Are you suggesting I might find employment there? I'm certain of it. The town council would snap you up in a heartbeat. Isaac leaned back in his chair, regarding her thoughtfully, though you shouldn't rush into anything until you're fully recovered. Zara's the smartest person ever, William declared loyally. She knows all about history and geography and even Latin. Is that so? Isaac's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Well then, Truckee would be fortunate indeed to secure your services, Miss Keller. The prospect of employment, of being able to provide for her siblings independently, lifted a tremendous weight from Zara's shoulders. Thank you for telling me, Mr. Maddox. I'll pursue it as soon as I'm able. After dinner, Isaac surprised her by inviting her to his study while Mrs. Winters supervised the children's baths. The room reflected its owner, practical yet comfortable, with a solid oak desk, shelves lined with books, and a leather chair worn smooth from use. Maps of the surrounding territory covered one wall, marked with notations in a neat hand. Please sit, Isaac offered, gesturing to a chair near the window. He remained standing, suddenly seeming less sure of himself than he had at dinner. I wanted to discuss something with you privately. Zara tensed slightly, wondering what was coming. He noticed her reaction and shook his head quickly. Nothing to worry about, he assured her. I just thought you should know I've sent word to Truckee about your parents. The undertaker, Mr. Peterson, will arrange to retrieve and bury them properly in the town cemetery, if that meets with your approval. Tears sprang unbidden to Zara's eyes. In the chaos of survival, she'd had little time to process her grief, and the fact that their bodies still lay unburied had weighed on her conscience. That's very kind. We have no money to pay for it's taken care of, Isaac said firmly. I insist, Miss Keller. Every soul deserves a proper resting place. Thank you, she whispered, unable to express the depth of her gratitude. He moved to the window, gazing out at the darkening sky. There's something else. Your siblings mentioned you were traveling with some family heirlooms, your mother's locket, your father's pocket watch, some letters. Yes, they would have been in the wagon, lost now, I suppose. Another small heartbreak atop the larger one. Isaac turned back to her, reaching into his desk drawer. I sent Barney and Tom back to the crash site yesterday. They found what they could. He handed her a small wooden box. With trembling fingers, Zara opened it to find her mother's gold locket, tarnished but intact. Her father's silver pocket watch, the glass cracked but the mechanism still ticking faintly. And a bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon correspondence between her parents during their courtship years. I thought these might matter to you, Isaac said quietly. Especially for the children, to have something to remember their parents by. Zara clutched the box to her chest, overcome. This man, this stranger who owed them nothing, had thought to recover these precious mementos when most would have considered food and water the only valuables worth salvaging. Mr. Maddox, she began, her voice unsteady, I don't know how to thank you for all you've done. He shook his head, seemingly embarrassed by her gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. No, Zara said with certainty. They wouldn't have. A moment of understanding passed between them, recognition of the rare kindness he had shown and her appreciation of it. Something shifted in the air, not romantic yet, but a foundation of respect and gratitude that might someday grow into something more. The moment was broken by Mrs. Winters appearing at the door. The children are asking for their goodnight story, Mr. Maddox. They're particularly hoping for the tale of the night and the dragon tonight. Isaac's serious expression melted into a smile. Duty calls, it seems. You're welcome to join us, Miss Keller, if you're not too tired. That night, sitting beside the children's bed while Isaac brought a story to life with different voices and dramatic gestures, Zara allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, that they were already a family not by blood or by law, but by the simple act of caring for one another. It was a dangerous thought, one she quickly suppressed. Their stay was temporary, their future uncertain. Allowing herself to grow attached to Isaac Maddox or this place would only lead to more heartbreak. Yet as she watched him tuck the blankets around her sleeping siblings with gentle hands, she couldn't help but wonder what it might be like if this moment weren't just borrowed, but belonged to them all. The days that followed established a routine. Zara regained her strength gradually, first helping Mrs. Winters with simple household tasks, then taking on more responsibilities. Emma shadowed the housekeeper constantly, learning to cook and keep house with enthusiastic determination. William, still recovering from his head injury but improving daily, appointed himself Isaac's unofficial assistant, following the rancher whenever allowed and absorbing every detail of ranch operations with sponge-like efficiency. 2 weeks after their arrival, Isaac drove Zara into Truckee to meet with the town council about the teaching position. The small frontier town bustled with activity. The transcontinental railroad had brought new life and commerce to what had once been little more than a way station. Lumber mills processed the towering pines from surrounding forests, businesses thrived along the main street, and new houses sprouted on the outskirts. "It's grown considerably since I first came here," Isaac commented as he guided the wagon down the main street. "The railroad changed everything." Brought opportunity, but challenges too. Zara noticed the mix of establishments, reputable businesses alongside saloons and gambling houses. Women in fine dresses walked past others in garish colors and heavy makeup. Children played in the dusty street, dodging wagons and horsemen. "Is it safe?" she asked, thinking of Emma and William. Isaac seemed to understand her concern. "Town's settling down. Sheriff Townsend runs a tight ship, and the respectable folks outnumber the troublemakers these days. The school's on the good side of town, near the church." The town council met in a room above the general store. 5 men in varying degrees of frontier finery greeted Isaac with evident respect before turning their attention to Zara. Her credentials from Missouri impressed them, as did her composed responses to their questions about curriculum and discipline. "We can offer $15 a month with a room at the back of the schoolhouse," the council president, a portly banker named Mr. Chambers, informed her. "Term starts in 2 weeks." It was less than she'd earned in Missouri, but enough to support herself and the children if they lived frugally. The thought of independence both thrilled and terrified her. "I accept with gratitude," Zara replied, shaking each man's hand firmly. "I look forward to serving Truckee's children." As they left the meeting, Isaac guided her toward the cemetery on the hill overlooking the town. 2 fresh graves marked with simple wooden crosses stood side by side. "I thought you might want to pay your respects," he said quietly, hanging back to give her privacy. Zara approached her parents' graves slowly, emotions swirling within her. She hadn't been able to say goodbye, hadn't been present for their burial. Kneeling between the graves, she placed a hand on each cross. "I'll take care of them," she whispered. "Emma and William will be safe, I promise, and I'll make you proud." When she returned to Isaac's side, his expression was solemn but supportive. "They raised a remarkable daughter," he said simply. "That's a legacy to be proud of." On the ride back to the ranch, Isaac broached a subject that had been hovering unspoken between them. "So you'll be moving to town when school begins?" Zara nodded, watching his profile as he kept his eyes on the road. "It seems the most practical solution. The room at the schoolhouse will accommodate the 3 of us, if somewhat snugly. You know you're welcome to stay at the ranch," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "It's only a half-hour ride to town. I could take you each morning and bring you back in the afternoon." The offer was tempting. The ranch had become a haven, and the thought of leaving its comfort and safety for a single room behind a schoolhouse held little appeal. But Zara recognized the danger in accepting. "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose further. You've done so much already." Isaac's hands tightened on the reins. "It's no imposition, Miss Keller. The children are thriving at the ranch. William especially, he has a natural gift with horses that shouldn't be wasted in town. And Mrs. Winters would miss Emma terribly." "And what about you?" Zara wanted to ask. "Would you miss me?" But such a question was too forward, too revealing of the confusing feelings that had begun to stir whenever he was near. "I'll consider it," she conceded, not ready to commit but unwilling to refuse outright. That evening after dinner, Zara found Isaac on the front porch, smoking a pipe and watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. She joined him, wrapping her shawl tighter against the evening breeze. "Beautiful country," she remarked, following his gaze to the Sierra Nevada range. "It is." He knocked his pipe against the railing to empty it. "Different from Missouri, I imagine. Very. We had rolling hills and forests, but nothing like these mountains." Zara hesitated, then asked, "Where are you from originally, Mr. Maddox?" "Pennsylvania, coal country." His expression darkened momentarily. "My father worked the mines, killed him before I turned 10. Mother remarried, and my stepfather decided to try his luck out west. That's when our wagon was attacked." "I'm sorry," Zara said softly. "You've known more than your share of loss." Isaac shrugged. "Life deals its cards. Some hands are better than others." He turned to face her directly. "But sometimes you get a chance to play a new hand entirely." There was something in his gaze that made Zara's heart beat faster. "Is that what you did here? Played a new hand?" "Henry Blackwood gave me that chance, taught me ranching from the ground up, treated me like the son he never had." Isaac's voice softened with memory. Man could barely read, but he knew cattle and horses better than anyone alive. And he knew people too could see right through pretense to what lay beneath. "He sounds remarkable." "He was." Isaac smiled. "He would have liked you, Miss Keller, would have said you had steel in your spine and kindness in your heart, his highest compliment." Zara felt her cheeks warm at the indirect praise. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, changing the subject, "to stay here while I teach in town." "And it would be better for the children," she acknowledged. "They're happy here in a way I feared they might never be again after our parents died." Isaac nodded, waiting for her to continue. "But I need to pay my way," she insisted. "I won't be a charity case." "There's no charity in neighbors helping neighbors," Isaac countered. "But if it eases your mind, Mrs. Winters has been complaining about keeping the ranch books and inventory. Numbers give her a headache, she says. You could take over that task, a fair exchange for room and board." It was a sensible arrangement, one that would allow Zara to maintain her independence while providing stability for her siblings. Yet some instinct warned her that living under Isaac Maddox's roof would complicate the carefully maintained distance she tried to establish between them. "I'll agree on a trial basis," she finally said. "If it works for all parties, we'll continue the arrangement." Isaac smiled, genuine pleasure lighting his features. "Excellent. I'll let Mrs. Winters know she'll be delighted." 2 weeks later, Zara stood before 28 children of varying ages in Truckee's one-room schoolhouse. From 5-year-old beginners learning their letters to 14-year-olds completing their education before joining their parents in adult work, the students represented Truckee's diverse population, the children of shopkeepers, railroad workers, lumbermen, and ranchers. Teaching grounded Zara, giving her purpose beyond mere survival. The familiar rhythm of lessons, the children's eager or occasionally reluctant faces, the smell of chalk and books all reminded her that despite everything that had changed, some constants remained. Emma and William attended school with her, though William chafed at being confined indoors after experiencing the freedom of ranch life. Each afternoon, Isaac or one of his men would be waiting outside the schoolhouse to take them home to the ranch, where Mrs. Winters always had fresh bread or cookies waiting. In the evenings, after the children were in bed, Zara would work on the ranch accounts in Isaac's study. He often joined her, reading quietly or discussing the day's events. These peaceful hours became something Zara looked forward to, a time of companionable silence or thoughtful conversation that gradually eroded the barriers she had erected around her heart. One such evening, nearly a month after she had begun teaching, Isaac closed his book and regarded her with unusual seriousness. "May I ask you something personal, Miss Keller?" Zara set down her pen, curious. "Of course. Were you promised to anyone back in Missouri, a fiancé or sweetheart?" The question caught her off guard. "No," she answered honestly. "There was little time for courting between teaching and helping my parents with the younger ones." Isaac nodded, seemingly relieved. And have you given thought to what your future might hold, beyond teaching and raising your siblings? Zara's pulse quickened. What exactly are you asking, Mr. Maddox? He stood, pacing to the window and back before answering. I'm not a man who believes in wasting time once my mind is made up, Miss Keller. I've grown quite fond of you and your siblings these past weeks, more than fond if I'm being honest. Zara's breath caught in her throat. Mr. Maddox, Isaac, please. He returned to his seat, leaning forward earnestly. I know it's soon, perhaps too soon after your loss, but I want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I would be honored to court you properly. The declaration, though not entirely unexpected given the growing warmth between them, still left Zara momentarily speechless. Her feelings for Isaac had developed gradually respect for his kindness and integrity, appreciation for his gentle way with her siblings, and yes, awareness of him as a man handsome, capable, and increasingly dear to her. I don't know what to say, she finally managed. You don't need to say anything now, he assured her. I just wanted my intentions to be clear. I'm not a man for games or uncertainty. His straightforwardness was refreshing after the careful social dances of her previous life. Still, caution compelled her to be honest. Isaac, I'm responsible for 2 children. Their welfare must come first in any decision I make. I understand that completely, he replied. In fact, it's one of the things I admire most about you, your devotion to them. I want you to know that any future I imagine includes all 3 of you as a family. Family. The word resonated deeply, stirring both longing and fear. To risk her heart again, to potentially build something new from the ashes of loss, it terrified and tempted her in equal measure. I need time, she said finally, but I'm not opposed to the idea of you courting me when the moment is right. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. That's all I can ask for. The next day brought an unexpected visitor to the schoolhouse. Zara looked up from helping a student with multiplication to find Sheriff Townsend standing awkwardly by the door, hat in hand. Begging your pardon, Miss Keller, he said when she approached. Might I have a word outside? Concern immediately flooded her. Had something happened at the ranch? Were the children in danger? Class, continue with your exercises, she instructed, trying to keep her voice calm as she followed the sheriff onto the schoolhouse steps. Nothing to worry about, Sheriff Townsend hastened to assure her, seeing her expression. Just some information I thought you should have. A man's been asking questions about you and your siblings in town. Zara frowned. What sort of questions? Wanting to know where you're staying, whether you had any kin hereabouts. Said he was your father's cousin from back east. The sheriff studied her reaction carefully. That true? No, Zara replied, confused and increasingly alarmed. My father had only one brother, my uncle, who died last winter. No cousins that I'm aware of. The sheriff nodded as if this confirmed his suspicions. Thought as much. Man didn't seem right too interested in whether you'd come into any property through your uncle. A chill ran down Zara's spine. Did he give a name? Called himself James Keller. Staying at the Silver Dollar Hotel. I'd suggest avoiding town for a few days until I can learn more about him. Thank you, Sheriff. Zara glanced back at the schoolhouse, worry churning in her stomach. I should get back to my students. I'll send word to Maddox, Sheriff Townsend promised. He'll see you get home safe today. The remainder of the school day passed in a blur of distraction for Zara. Who was this man claiming kinship with her father? What could he possibly want with them? As promised, Isaac himself waited outside when school dismissed, his expression grim beneath his hat brim. He helped Emma and William into the wagon before turning to Zara. Sheriff Townsend sent word, he explained quietly, lifting her onto the seat beside him. Do you have any idea who this man might be? None, Zara admitted as they pulled away from town. Father never mentioned any cousins and mother would have known if they existed. Isaac's jaw tightened. I don't like it. Man shows up asking questions about 3 orphan children right after their parents die. Smells like a vulture circling. William piped up from the back of the wagon. Is something wrong, Mr. Isaac? Nothing for you to worry about, partner, Isaac reassured him with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Just grown-up business. That evening after the children were asleep, Isaac called a council of the ranch's adults in the kitchen. Mrs. Winters, Barney, and Tom gathered around the table with Isaac and Zara, all faces serious in the lamplight. "I've known Sheriff Townsend 15 years, Isaac began. "If he's suspicious of this stranger, we'd be fools to ignore his warning. Could he be after the children for some reason?" Mrs. Winters asked, her maternal protectiveness evident. "Perhaps there's an inheritance or property we don't know about," Zara shook her head. "My parents left nothing but debts in Missouri, and Uncle John's property was sold at auction to cover his medical expenses before he died. There's no money to be had from our family. Maybe he's just what he claims, a distant relative looking to help," Tom suggested, though his tone conveyed his doubt. "Then why lie about being your father's cousin?" Isaac countered. "No, something's not right here." He turned to Zara. "Until we know more, I think it's best if you and the children stay at the ranch. I'll speak with the school board about a brief absence." Barney, typically the quietest of the group, cleared his throat. "There's another possibility. Could be he's after Miss Keller herself. Pretty young woman, newly orphaned with young'uns to feed, might seem vulnerable to the wrong sort of man." The thought sent a shiver through Zara, though she tried not to show it. "If that's his aim, he'll find I'm not as defenseless as I appear." Isaac's expression darkened further. "Nevertheless, I'd feel better knowing you're all safely here while Sheriff Townsend investigates." His hand moved unconsciously to cover Zara's on the table, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the others. "Then it's settled," Mrs. Winters declared, rising to put on the kettle. "The children stay home from school, and we all keep our eyes open for strangers on the property." The next morning, Zara was helping Mrs. Winters hang laundry when the sound of an approaching horse drew their attention. Isaac emerged from the barn, rifle in hand, as a rider came into view on the road from town. "It's Sheriff Townsend," Isaac identified the rider, lowering his weapon but not putting it aside entirely. The sheriff dismounted, looking grave as he approached. "Morning, ladies, Isaac." He nodded to each of them. "Got some news about your visitor, Miss Keller." They gathered in the kitchen, where the sheriff accepted a cup of coffee before delivering his information. "Man's name isn't James Keller at all. He's Calvin Ridgway, a confidence man known in several territories. Got a warrant out for him in Nevada, swindled a widow out of her dead husband's mining claim." Zara frowned. "But what could he possibly want with us? We have nothing of value." The sheriff set down his cup. "I did some digging. Your Uncle John left something after all mining rights to a parcel up in the Sierras. Claim was thought worthless until recently, when the Central Pacific surveyors found a potential silver vein running through that section. But the property was sold," Zara protested, "to cover his medical debts." "The house and farm were sold," Sheriff Townsend corrected. "But the mining rights were separate, filed under a slightly different name, John J. Keller rather than John Keller. Easy oversight for the county clerk to make. According to the record, those rights legally passed to your father as John's only living kin. With your father's death, they would now belong to his children." The implications dawned on Zara slowly. "So this Ridgway person is trying to, what? Claim kinship to gain control of mining rights that might be valuable? That would be my guess. Man's been asking pointed questions about guardianship of minor children, trying to determine if your brother and sister have any legal protection." The sheriff's expression hardened. "I've seen his type before. They prey on the vulnerable, especially orphans with potential assets." Isaac, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "What's to stop him from simply forging documents claiming guardianship, out here with record keeping what it is?" "That's my concern as well," Sheriff Townsend agreed, "which is why I think Miss Keller needs to file for legal guardianship of her siblings immediately and possibly secure the mining rights in her name as well." "I'll ride into town with her today," Isaac decided. "The sooner this is resolved, the better," the sheriff hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Ridgway was gone from the hotel this morning, paid his bill and left before dawn." A tense silence fell over the kitchen. If the man had left town, where had he gone? "And what was he planning?" "I don't like this," Isaac muttered. "Not one bit, nor I," the sheriff agreed, rising. I'll keep looking for him, but in the meantime, stay vigilant. Man like that doesn't give up easily when there's money involved. After Sheriff Townsend departed, Isaac and Zara made hurried preparations to ride into town. Mrs. Winters promised to keep the children close to the house, and Barney and Tom armed themselves before returning to their work around the ranch. "I still can't believe Uncle John had mining rights," Zara said as Isaac helped her into the wagon. "He never mentioned it in his letters to Father." "Probably thought they were worthless," Isaac replied, climbing up beside her. "Most claims are. For every strike that pans out, 100 others yield nothing but broken dreams." The journey to town was tense, both of them scanning the landscape for any sign of the mysterious Calvin Ridgway. Truckee seemed unchanged when they arrived, the usual bustle of commerce continuing unaware of their personal drama. At the county clerk's office, Zara filed formal guardianship papers for Emma and William. The process was straightforward as their only living adult relative. Her claim was uncontested. The mining rights proved more complicated. "These rights were registered to John J. Keller," the clerk explained, peering at dusty ledgers through spectacles that continually slid down his nose. "I need proof that you're the rightful heir through your father." Zara produced her parents' marriage certificate and her own birth certificate, which she had fortunately brought west with her. "My father, Harold Keller, was John's only brother. With both of them deceased, I'm the eldest surviving member of the family." The clerk examined the documents, then nodded slowly. "Seems in order. I'll register the transfer, though it'll take a few days to process completely." As they left the office, Isaac kept a protective hand at the small of Zara's back. "That should secure things legally, at least, but I'll feel better when Ridgway is in custody." "Do you really think these mining rights could be valuable?" Zara asked as they walked toward the wagon. The thought of suddenly possessing something of worth was disorienting after weeks of financial uncertainty. "Hard to say," Isaac replied. "The railroads brought all sorts of speculation to these parts, but even if there is silver there, mining takes capital equipment, men, expertise. It's not something you could undertake on your own." Zara nodded, practical as always. "Then perhaps we should consider selling the rights to someone who can develop them properly. The proceeds could secure the children's future education opportunities." Isaac smiled down at her. "Always thinking of them first. It's one of the things he broke off suddenly, his expression changing as he looked past Zara toward the hotel across the street. "Don't turn around," he said quietly, "but I believe I've just spotted our Mr. Ridgway." Zara tensed. "What's he doing?" "Watching us." Isaac steered her casually toward the general store. "Let's give Sheriff Townsend a chance to find him. Act natural." Inside the store, Isaac positioned himself where he could see the street through the window while pretending to examine a display of tools. Zara browsed shelves of fabric, her heart racing despite her outward calm. "He's moving," Isaac murmured after a few minutes. "Heading toward the clerk's office, he must have been following us." Alarm coursed through Zara. "The papers, if he interferes before they're processed, I'll find the sheriff," Isaac decided. "You stay here where it's public. Don't leave the store until I return." Before Zara could protest, he was gone, striding purposefully down the street toward the sheriff's office. She continued her pretense of shopping, though her attention remained fixed on the door, watching for any sign of the man who threatened her family's security. Minutes stretched like hours. The storekeeper, Mr. Bennett, approached with a friendly smile. "Finding everything all right, Miss Keller?" "Yes, thank you," she replied automatically, forcing a smile. "Just looking for now. Take your time." He hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "If you're waiting for Mr. Maddox, I'd be happy to offer you a seat in the back room, more comfortable than standing about." The kindness in his weathered face suggested he sensed her discomfort. "That's very thoughtful, but I'll continue browsing, thank you." Mr. Bennett nodded and returned to his counter, but Zara noticed he kept an eye on the door as well. Small town awareness, perhaps everyone seemed to know everyone else's business in Truckee. The bell above the door jingled, and Zara's heart leapt to her throat. But it was only Mrs. Peterson, the undertaker's wife, entering with her shopping basket. Zara exhaled slowly, trying to calm her nerves. Then the bell rang again. This time, the man who entered matched the description Sheriff Townsend had given: medium height, well-dressed in a slightly flashy way, with a carefully trimmed mustache and shrewd eyes that immediately fixed on Zara. "Miss Keller, I presume." His voice was smooth, cultivated, with an Eastern accent. "What a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm James Keller, your father's cousin from Pennsylvania." Zara straightened, meeting his gaze directly. "That's strange, Mr. Keller, considering my father had no cousins, and Sheriff Townsend tells me your real name is Calvin Ridgway." A flicker of annoyance crossed his face before his smile returned, more forced now. "A misunderstanding, I assure you. The sheriff is confused." "I think not." Zara took a step back, keeping the fabric display between them. She was acutely aware of Mr. Bennett moving quietly toward the back of the store, going for his shotgun. She hoped Ridgway's facade of friendliness dropped. "Let's dispense with the pretense, Miss Keller. You've recently come into possession of potentially valuable mining rights. As a young woman with 2 children to raise, you're hardly equipped to manage such an asset. And you propose to manage it for me, I suppose?" Zara's voice dripped with skepticism. "I'm prepared to offer you $500 for the rights, a generous sum for something that may prove worthless." He reached into his coat, producing a document. "I have the papers ready. All you need to do is sign." "The rights are already being transferred to my name," Zara informed him, a small satisfaction warming her at the flash of alarm in his eyes. "And if they're valuable enough for you to track me across territories and create an elaborate false identity, I rather think they're worth more than $500. Ridgway's expression hardened. "Don't be foolish, girl. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Mining requires connections, capital, knowledge, things you lack entirely." "Perhaps," she acknowledged. "But I'm not without resources or friends here, Mr. Ridgway, and unlike you, they have my best interests at heart." His hand moved toward his waistcoat, where Zara suspected a weapon was concealed. But before he could reach it, the store door banged open and Sheriff Townsend entered, revolver drawn, with Isaac right behind him. "Calvin Ridgway," the sheriff announced, "you're under arrest for fraud, impersonation, and attempted swindling. There's also the matter of that warrant from Nevada." Ridgway's hand froze. His eyes darted around, calculating odds and exits before his shoulders slumped in defeat. "A misunderstanding, Sheriff. I was merely offering the lady a business proposition. Save it for the judge." Sheriff Townsend gestured with his gun, hands where I can see them, nice and slow. As the sheriff led Ridgway away, Isaac rushed to Zara's side. "Are you all right? Did he threaten you?" "I'm fine," she assured him, though her legs felt suddenly weak with the release of tension. "He tried to buy the mining rights for $500. Isaac's expression darkened. "Must be worth considerably more then. The railroad surveyors wouldn't make a mistake about a silver vein." Mr. Bennett emerged from the back room, shotgun in hand. "Everything settled then. Saw that fellow watching the store earlier, didn't like the look of him one bit." "Sheriff has him now," Isaac confirmed. "Thank you for keeping an eye on Miss Keller. Least I could do." The storekeeper set his gun aside. "You know, if those mining rights are what he was after, you might want to speak with Mr. Hargrove at the bank. He's been representing some Eastern investors looking to develop claims in the area." Isaac thanked him for the suggestion, and soon they were heading to the bank to meet with Mr. Hargrove. The banker, a precise man with ink-stained fingers, listened to their story with growing interest. "The Central Pacific surveyors are rarely wrong about these things," he confirmed. "If they identified a silver vein on that property, it's likely substantial. The investors I represent would certainly be interested in purchasing or leasing the rights for development." "And what might such rights be worth?" Isaac asked, his hand finding Zara's beneath the desk. Mr. Hargrove considered. "Without a proper survey, it's difficult to say precisely. But for similar claims in the area with promising indicators, we've paid between $5,000 and $10,000, Zara gasped. Such a sum was beyond her wildest expectations, enough to secure Emma and William's education, to perhaps buy a small house in town, to establish true independence. Of course, we would need to conduct our own survey first. Mr. Hargrove continued. If you're amenable, I could arrange for our mining engineer to examine the claim next week. That would be acceptable, Zara agreed, still dazed by the figures mentioned. Though I'd like Mr. Maddox to accompany your engineer if possible, of course. Mr. Hargrove smiled. Always wise to have representation in these matters. As they drove back to the ranch, the late afternoon sun gilding the mountains ahead, Zara sat in stunned silence, trying to process the day's events. "Penny for your thoughts," Isaac said finally. "They're worth at least $5,000, apparently," she replied with a shaky laugh. "I can hardly believe it. Yesterday we had nothing but what I earned teaching. Today you're potentially a woman of means," Isaac finished for her. "Though I hope it doesn't change your plans to stay at the ranch." There was a note of vulnerability in his voice that touched Zara deeply. "Why would it? Money doesn't change what matters most." He glanced at her, a question in his eyes. "And what matters most, Zara?" It was the first time he'd used her given name without the formal miss before it. The intimacy of it, coupled with the day's emotional turbulence, broke down the last of her carefully constructed walls. "Family," she said softly. "The children, of course, and the people who have become dear to us, to me." Isaac's hands tightened on the reins. "I meant what I said before about courting you. These feelings haven't changed. If anything, they've grown stronger. But I want you to know that whatever you decide about the mining rights or your future, my offer stands independently of all that." Zara studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the determination in his eyes, the gentleness that belied his rugged exterior. This man had saved them in every way a person could be saved physically, emotionally, practically. Yet he asked nothing in return except the chance to earn her heart. "Isaac," she said, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest, "I believe I would welcome your courtship. In fact, I think it may have already begun without either of us quite acknowledging it." The smile that transformed his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He pulled the wagon to a stop in the middle of the road, turned to her, and with infinite gentleness, took her hand in his. "May I kiss you, Zara Keller?" In answer, she leaned forward, closing the distance between them. His lips met hers in a kiss that was tender yet filled with promise of comfort after loneliness, of strength supporting strength, of a future neither had imagined but both now desired. When they finally continued homeward, something fundamental had shifted between them. The wagon rolled on toward the ranch, toward Emma and William, toward Mrs. Winters and the others who had become their extended family, toward a future suddenly rich with possibility. The mining claim proved even more valuable than initially estimated. Mr. Hargrove's engineer confirmed a substantial silver vein running through the property, and after careful negotiation with Isaac's help, Zara accepted an offer of $8,000 for the rights, a fortune that secured her siblings' future and her own independence. Yet despite this newfound wealth, little changed in their daily lives. Zara continued teaching at the truckee school, finding fulfillment in educating the town's children. Emma and William thrived at the ranch, growing stronger and happier with each passing month. And Isaac courted Zara with old-fashioned persistence and respect, his feelings evident in every glance and gesture. By Christmas, 6 months after the wagon crash that had claimed her parents' lives, Zara found herself standing before the hearth in the ranch house, watching Isaac distribute gifts to the children with the joy of a man who had found his purpose. Mrs. Winters, Barney, and Tom completed their circle, along with several neighbors who had joined them for the holiday celebration. As the evening wound down and guests departed into the snowy night, Isaac drew Zara onto the porch, the stars brilliant in the clear winter sky above. "I have one more gift," he said, producing a small box from his pocket. "Though perhaps it's more of a question than a gift." Zara's heart quickened as he opened the box to reveal a gold band set with a single diamond. Simple, elegant, perfect. "Zara Keller," Isaac began, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes, "when I found you on that trail with Emma and William, I told you we would be a family. I meant it then as a promise of safety and shelter, but now I mean it in a deeper way." He took her gloved hand in his. I love you, I love the children, I want to build a life with all of you if you'll have me. Tears blurred Zara's vision as she looked up at this man who had become the center of her world. The children will be thrilled, she managed with a watery laugh, and their sister, Isaac pressed gently. What does she say? In answer, Zara rose on tiptoe and kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. When they parted, breathless in the cold air, she whispered, yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married in the spring, when wildflowers carpeted the meadows around the ranch. The entire town of Truckee seemed to attend, the schoolchildren throwing rose petals as Zara walked down the aisle of the small church on Barney's arm, Emma serving as her maid of honor and William proudly bearing the rings. As Isaac slipped the gold band onto her finger and promised to love and cherish her all the days of his life, Zara marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From tragedy to triumph, from loss to love, their story had unfolded in ways she could never have imagined that terrible day when the wagon crashed and left her alone with her siblings. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the minister declared. You may kiss your bride. Isaac gathered her in his arms, his kiss a promise of all the years to come. Behind them, Emma and William cheered louder than anyone, their joy complete in this moment of family becoming official what it had been in their hearts for months. The celebration afterward at the ranch lasted well into the evening, with music and dancing, food and laughter. As the sun began to set, Zara found a quiet moment alone with Isaac on the porch where he had proposed. Happy, Mrs. Maddox? He asked, his arm secure around her waist. Completely, she assured him, leaning into his embrace. Though I still can't quite believe how our story unfolded. From that terrible day on the trail to this perfect one, it seems almost impossible. Not impossible, Isaac corrected gently, just unlikely. Like finding a silver vein where none was expected, or building a successful ranch from nothing, or, his voice softened, or finding a family when you least expect it. Zara turned in his arms to face him, her heart so full it seemed impossible it could contain such love. You saved us that day. Not just our lives, but our future. You gave us hope when there was none. And you gave me purpose beyond work and ambition, he countered. You showed me what it means to be truly needed, truly loved. From inside came the sound of William's laughter, followed by Emma's voice calling for them. Their family not formed by blood but by choice, by love, by the shared experience of finding one another when they needed it most. We should go back in, Zara said, though she made no move to leave the circle of Isaac's arms, in a moment. He brushed a tendril of hair from her face, his touch reverent. I just want to remember this you here at the beginning of our life together. Not the beginning, Zara corrected with a smile. That was on the trail when you found us and said we'd be a family, so I did, Isaac acknowledged. Best promise I ever made. As they rejoined the celebration, hand in hand, Zara knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges the future might bring, they would face them together, she and Isaac, Emma and William, and the children that might someday join their family. From the ashes of tragedy, they had built something beautiful and enduring, a love story written not in the stars, but in the dust of the trail where they had found one another. Epilogue 5 years later, Zara stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching as Isaac taught their 3-year-old son Joseph to ride his first pony. Emma, now 15 and blossoming into a beautiful young woman, supervised while keeping an eye on the newest addition to the family's 6-month-old Elizabeth, who cooed contentedly in her basket. William, 12 and already nearly as tall as Zara, worked alongside Barney in the corral, showing every sign of following in his adopted father's footsteps as a rancher. The Pine Valley Ranch had prospered under Isaac's management, expanding to become one of the most successful operations in the region. The money from the mining rights had been carefully invested, providing security for their growing family and allowing Zara to establish a scholarship fund for Truckee students who wished to continue their education beyond what the local school could provide. Mrs. Winters still ruled the kitchen, though she now had help from a young woman from town. The housekeeper's affection for the children, all four of them now, was evident in everything from the cookies that always seemed to appear when they were most needed to the hand-knit blankets that graced each bed. Life wasn't perfect. They had weathered hard winters and dry summers, a fire that had threatened the north pasture, and the normal challenges of building a life together. But through it all, the foundation remained solid, the love that had begun when a cowboy found 3 orphans on a dusty trail and promised that they would be a family. As Joseph squealed with delight at his first independent circuit of the paddock, Isaac looked up to find Zara watching. The smile they exchanged held the warmth of years shared, of struggles overcome, of joy multiplied through sharing. Later that night, with the children asleep and the house quiet, Isaac and Zara sat before the fire in the study where they had first begun to know each other. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Zara asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "If you hadn't found us that day, or if I'd refused to stay here, or if any number of small choices had gone another way." "Sometimes," Isaac admitted, his arm tightening around her. "But then I remember something Henry Blackwood told me once. He said that life has a way of leading you where you need to go, even when the path seems lost. Our paths were meant to cross, Zara. I believe that with everything in me." Zara considered this, watching the firelight play across the face she had come to love beyond measure. "From tragedy to this," she mused, "it still seems miraculous." "Not miraculous," Isaac corrected gently, "just right. This is where we were always heading toward each other, toward this family we've built together." As they sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling and the distant sound of the wind in the pines providing a soft accompaniment to their thoughts, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The wagon crash that had seemed like the end of everything had, in fact, been the beginning, the first step on a path that led to love, to family, to a happiness deeper and more enduring than she could ever have imagined. Outside, the stars wheeled over the Sierra Nevada, the same stars that had watched over them that first desperate night after the crash. But now they shone not on fear and loss, but on a home filled with love, on a family bound not just by blood but by choice, and on a future bright with promise and possibility. In the end, it wasn't the silver from the mining claim that had proven most valuable, nor the ranch's success, nor any material thing. It was the simple truth Isaac had spoken that day on the trail, words that had seemed impossible then but had become their reality: "We'll be a family." And so they were,